Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to finally bring you my January wrap-up. Buckle in, because in January, somehow, to my own surprise, I ended up reading 10 things. I am going to try and keep this as condensed as possible, but still, I think we should just jump on in. The first thing I finished in January was The Summer Palace by C.S. Pacat. This is a novella. It's an epilogue of sorts to the Captive Prince trilogy, and frankly, it's perfect in every way. It's like I was sending distress signals out into the universe, and C.S. Pacat answered the frickin' call. Just, brilliantly. That's all I have to say, honestly. 5 stars. Just 5 stars. Then remember how in my last book haul I said I was going to read Gives Light by Rose Christo first thing in 2017? Well, I made good on that promise, but I kind of read the entire series. Well, I've read 5 out of the 6, but technically the last 2 books in the series are kind of recursive, so they're part of the series, but they're not. So really, I read the entire series. Gives Light is Own Voices native fiction. It's also queer lit, and there's disability representation as well. The main character, Skylar, has been mute since childhood when he was attacked by his mother's killer. Later in life, his dad mysteriously disappears, and Skylar is sent to live with a grandmother he's never met on a reservation called Nettlebush in Arizona. There's nothing I don't love about this series. The way it's written, the characters, the truth and honesty and passion that just exudes off the pages. It's real and authentic without being exploitative, without being voyeuristic. The story allows you inside Skylar's culture, inside the Shoshone culture, while still keeping something sacred. These stories, these beliefs, these rituals, they're not for us. They're not for non-native people to consume or know or romanticize. Enough has been forcibly taken away from native people. We really don't need to add anything else, especially when it comes to the consumption of native fiction. The series explores themes of trauma, intergenerational suffering and its inheritance, the internalization of white colonialism. It's not only an extraordinary love story and coming-of-age narrative, but it's really a story of empowerment and protest. It encourages Native youths especially to know their laws and rights, to recognize institutional oppression that's written into our very legislation, to fight for what they believe in. All at once, it's a narrative of preservation, but it's also about the necessary act of redefining who you are and what you believe in, realizing that the past and the present are one and the same. The Gives Light series is wonderful. It deserves so much more love and recognition, and it got under my skin in the best way possible. I loved every single installment, and I gave pretty much all of them 5 stars. Then I finally completed The Lives of Christopher Chant by Diana Wynne Jones. This story is about a boy named Christopher who was born with 9 lives, which basically marks him as the next Crestomancy. The Crestomancy's job is to oversee all use of magic in this world and all other worlds and realities that exist, which Christopher can travel to when he dreams. The thing is, Christopher is a bit careless, and he's much better at losing his lives than keeping them, which can't be good. All in all, this was another magnificent, effervescent fantasy adventure story from the queen of clever, Diana Wynne Jones. I really enjoyed seeing the massive character growth that Christopher went through over the course of this story. He goes from being an ignorant, reckless child who only considers how much fun he might get out of any given situation to recognizing the real weight of responsibility that comes with having multiple lives and being able to wield this extraordinary power. People really depend on him and look to him for safety and security, and you can see him really starting to lean into that towards the end of the story, though of course he still has a ways to grow. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series, but I gave this first book 4 stars. After that, I read Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. This is an explicitly feminist collection of poetry that's all about breaking, healing, and empowerment. It deals a lot with themes of trauma, rape, self-hatred, and heartbreak, but it's also about picking up the pieces. I really admire Rupi Kaur's approach to her poetry. It's simplistic, it's minimalistic, at times it's conversational, and it makes you think about how much form plays into what we even define as poetry. I respect her no-frills style and how she uses this careful combination of words, art, and white space to tell this story of healing and ultimately self-love. I also noticed there were some brief moments of levity and grace strewn throughout the breaking, but also some moments of extreme pain and self-doubt laced throughout the healing as well, so I found it to be a very truthful and well-balanced collection. There were pieces in here, however, that just felt like reworked cliches or like common platitudes that had just been rewritten but with line breaks. It is a really fantastic, powerful collection of poetry, but at the same time, I just don't think it's that complete redefinition and subversion of the genre that a lot of people claim it to be. My initial gut reaction was to rate this collection 4 stars, and I definitely loved it, but I've since gone back and amended that to 3.5 stars. Then I read The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This is Own Voices. It's about Natasha, whose family is about to be deported back to Jamaica because of something her father has done. It's also about Daniel, a Korean-American boy whom Natasha meets on her final day in America while making one last attempt to save her family. I was optimistic yet hesitant going into this story because I knew it would comment in some way on insta-love, and it also just seemed like a really complex emotional story that I knew was going to be told over the course of only one day. But the atmosphere and emotional tenor of this story is so vibrant and undeniable and real, it's simply magnetic. I think this story works because Daniel and Natasha are so opposite. Natasha is calculative, scientific, she's a realist. Daniel is the incurable romantic, the optimist, the poet. So the more Daniel's trying to convince Natasha that they do have something real, something that matters, Natasha is challenging it the same way the audience might challenge it, with the same skepticism. But their connection is so infectious, so authentic, that by the time Natasha realizes that she's been denying herself her true feelings, the audience is pretty much on board too. That's what I like most about the story, is that it validates the thoughts and feelings of young people, especially of people of any age, because if something matters to you, then it matters, period. Sometimes we forget that while there are forces that we can't contend with, we can make some things happen too. Yes, we have many limitations, some people more than others, but that doesn't mean that we have to let the world decide what is worth caring about. I also thought it was great how this story explores the different experiences of immigrants, especially across generations, and how these people invest so much of themselves in countries that ultimately disregard and silence them. Anyways, this was a wonderful, unputdownable story that I enjoyed very much, and I gave it 4 stars. And the last thing I read in January was A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. This story is about Ove, whose wife has recently passed away, and if he had his way, he would follow her shortly, but instead he gets some nosy, annoying, eccentric new neighbors who force him to be on alert at all times. The best parts of this story are written with pure sincerity. All at once, it's this sort of humorous, lighthearted romp through the life of a grumpy elderly man, but there's also these glimpses of severe grief and depression and pain. Ultimately, it is an uplifting story about moving on and about how life is something that you don't always live for yourself. But you do get to see that struggle of someone who's lived through so much, through so many changes and advancements, that the world as they were taught to understand it is completely unrecognizable, and how much harder it is to reconcile that alone. So I did like a lot of the story, but I also found there to be a lot of unnecessary, problematic commentary coming from Ove. He sporadically thinks gratuitously fatphobic, xenophobic, homophobic things, which are very clearly meant to amuse the audience, and they're positioned as like this very necessary thing to show that he's an awful person, when in reality he's awful in so many other ways. I also don't appreciate how this story handles suicide and suicide attempts. It's mostly used as a plot device, and again, it's written in this way that's supposed to be almost humorous, and maybe that's because his heart's not really in it, but it just doesn't sit right. So there were some parts of this story I definitely could have done without, but overall I really was invested in the story, and I would like to read more of Fredrik Backman's work in the future, but I gave this book 3.5 stars. So those are all the books I read in January. In the comments down below, let me know if you have read these books, if you plan to read them, and what you think of them. But that is everything I had for this wrap up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!